Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where, as everyone on the face of the earth knows, WandaVision starts on Friday, with the MCU, a sleeping giant, finally beginning to stir after an entire year. I hope you enjoyed your break from the Dominator, Hollywood, because Marvel's about to return. And because Disney publicity is such a well-oiled machine, to rev fans up, this past Friday, Disney Plus debuted Marvel Studios' Legends, which is basically 7-minute highlight reels. And it's done very well on the service, especially considering it's just a 7-minute reel, 2 7-minute reels. And as you know, the amount of minutes that a product has, that content has, really helps give it an edge in the trending section. So that's amazing. And I decided to check them out because they were doing so well. And I have to say, it was nice to be reminded and to watch the highlight reel, and it got you in the mood. And as I watched Wanda overwhelm her opponents with a seemingly never-ending flow of red energy again and again and again, I was like that person that Steven Soderbergh talked about. Disney, Marvel intentionally turned me into that individual, just watching from highlight to highlight. But it reminded me of all the cold hard cash Warner Brothers is now throwing at its own problems. Is Warner Brothers' flow of cash never ending? Of course not. Maybe Wanda's isn't either. I think we're about to find out as the multiverse kicks off. But we know that Warner Brothers needs money coming in to keep money being able to go out. And right now, they're expelling a tremendous amount of cash and getting ready to expel even more. Well, very little is coming in. Let's discuss. So, as you all know, in December, Warner Brothers made the mic drop announcement that they were releasing their entire 2021 slate of movies both in theaters and on HBO Max same day. Only it ended up not being a mic drop. There was tremendous feedback right away. Warner Brothers and Warner Media had felt their contracts gave them the right to change distribution plans without the approval of their business partners or talent involved. And while that's true, said business partners and talent involved quickly made it clear that A, they'd plan to take Warner Brothers to court to challenge that, and B, would boycott Warner Brothers going forward, including talent refusing to promote said movies in 2021. Not only would that hobble HBO Max's planned expansion, but it would be incredibly embarrassing for Warner Brothers and parent companies Warner Media and AT&T. Because that's the media would say, hey, are you curious as to why Denzel Washington isn't talking about the little things with anyone? That's because he needs to get paid. Basically, Warner Brothers is about to turn everyone into Dave Chappelle. And that would not be good for them. So I suppose Warner Brothers felt that they'd lose a ton of money in lawsuits and lost revenue anyway, and they do have some extra cash also floating around at the studio from the movies that haven't been able to film because of the pandemic. Now, obviously, it'd be great if they could just hold on to that cash for a rainy day, but it's pouring right now. This is the rainy day. So they've decided to pay out everyone as if these movies were all hits. And they've also significantly lowered I don't think you could lower the box office watermarks low enough to give anybody a bonus based on what the box office is like right now. But they're paying them out much more aggressively from box office. There's really no box office. But then also they're going to give them a cut of what HBO Max is paying internally. So like HBO Max is paying itself to stream its own movies. There's just money flowing from different parts of the AT&T Warner Media conglomerate. So part of that money will go not only to the higher ups on these movies, the production companies and the top talent, but they're even going to let crew members participate in these earnings, which crew members usually get in the ancillary market some of that revenue, but it's very unusual for them to get a level of box office participation that they're going to get. And these people are not going to want to go back now to this old format because Warner Brothers feels they can just turn off the cash spout at the end of 2021. They'll be like, whew, we sure poured a lot of money into trying to launch HBO Max. We'll see if it works. But now we're going to go back to the way things were. I think it's very hard to take money away from people, as evidenced by people being upset that money was being taken away from them with this new HBO Max distribution strategy. So, I guess Warner Brothers feels we'll cross that, bridge, or it's not even a bridge anymore. But we'll try and get out of that disaster when we come to it. And of course, because Hollywood is a business, as I'm always reminding you, it wasn't about artistic credibility and where a movie should be seen. It was all about money. People were afraid they weren't going to make the same amount of money they usually made with this change. And I think that going forward, they're going to be like, hey, I want to keep making this new amount of money that you've promised me. But it's all about money. Hollywood never does anything unless the money is there to motivate them. from diversifying casts to everything. And so I think that if you want change to happen, you need to realize that's what motivates it in Hollywood. Also, something else motivating these deals to probably go through is that, as I said, there's no money at the box office right now. So where else are these movies going to go? Now, you could continue to just sit on them. But not only is that bad from the perspective of the studio, because it's effectively cash out and they're accumulating interest on the money they borrowed to make said films. They need to pay it back. But I think the movies that have been failing have not only been failing like Mulan and Wonder Woman 1984, not just because of choices the films themselves made, but I do think that audiences having to wait so long for these movies really built up anticipation and expectations to insurmountable levels. And so holding these films is only going to create probably a bad reaction to them. I'm really curious to see what's going to happen to Black Widow if Marvel can once again escape the fate of literally everyone else. But I think that nobody wants their movie to be trashed like that. I think Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot and Nikki Caro and everyone associated with Mulan are, been seriously hurt by the reactions to their films. Nobody wants that. It's bad for their business. So I think that that's another thing. You just can't sit on these movies much longer. So yes, you likely will be getting all the 2021 movies that HBO Max promised you, even Godzilla vs. Kong and probably even Dune. But it's going to literally cost Warner Brothers, Warner Media, and AT&T dearly. Which would be fine if everyone was signing up for HBO Max, which was the whole reason that they did this. But so far, they're not. Because if they were, Warner Media would be telling us, especially to offset the very bad Wonder Woman 1984 box office headlines. Like, wow, look, it's cratering there, but look what's happening to HBO Max. It's alive, or at least catching up to everyone else. But they're not saying that, so it seems it means it's likely not happening. Hopefully, we'll get some information finally on the AT&T earnings call on January 27th. But they have a lot to go over, so that's going to be, we'll see. An earnings report is usually released earlier in the day, and then they have a call with more information towards the end of the day, so we'll see what comes out. But AT&T obviously has a lot to cover. But as I said last week on Movie Math, clearly Wonder Woman 1984 is not the movie to motivate subscribers, just like Mulan ended up being the wrong movie to test Disney Plus's Premier Access. I don't know if Raya and the Last Dragon's the right movie either. I don't know if there is a good movie to test that plan, quite frankly, paying additional on an already pay service. Maybe Black Widow could do that. But I think, especially you'll see later on, we're going to talk about, price point. It's still, evidence that it's still very important. But people are just going to go livid if you ask them to shell out that much money for something they would not even technically own for that price point. So I don't know if Premier Access is going to work. But back to HBO Max, which offers the movie at no additional cost. What movie will motivate people to subscribe to HBO Max en masse? I mean, we're not even talking about the fact that this thing's only still available in the United States, and so that really limits how many people can subscribe anyway. But they could still get Netflix has as we discussed last week, Netflix has 70 million subscribers in the United States. So they could certainly get a lot more than around the little under 13 where they were last hovering. So what movie will get people to subscribe to HBO Max? They won't have a big movie until April with Mortal Kombat. Maybe they shouldn't have pushed that so far back from January. I mean, maybe Tom and Jerry will do the trick. Here's a list of 2021 Warner Brothers movies that will be debuting simultaneously on HBO Max and their release dates. Which one is going to get you to subscribe? And if you subscribe for Wonder Woman 1984, are you going to stick with HBO Max, or are you going to ride that subscription? And if you're riding it, when will you come back after leaving after your 1 month for Wonder Woman 1984? And yes, Wonder Woman 1984 continues to struggle at the box office. Struggle is even a generous word for what's happening. In its third weekend, this time competing with news coverage of the attack on the Capitol, Wonder Woman 1984 fell again, this time 45%. It's not as bad as last weekend, but that's still really bad. And while it held on the number one spot in a very sad race, it's only at 32.6 million and it's domestic, and it's clearly not going to get anywhere near Tenet's domestic numbers or worldwide numbers. I called it last week. I said it was never going to catch up to Tenet. But some of you still held out hope that Wonder Woman 1984 could match or come close to Tenet's own pandemic numbers. Now, here's another thing I want to point out. Captain Marvel made $1 billion. $1 billion! Of course, during normal circumstances. And that film has a lot of its own detractors. But those detractors even point out that the film benefited strategically from the MCU. It came out right before Avengers Endgame. Everybody had a huge cliffhanger at the end of Infinity War, one of the best cliffhangers of all time, and people were chomping at the bit. Ant-Man and the Wasp hadn't scratched that itch, so here comes Captain Marvel, introducing a new character who was heralded as not only important to Avengers Endgame, but the future of the MCU, which she is. And this highlights another DCEU problem. Because their movies aren't connected, audiences feel, and they're correct, that they can skip a DCEU movie if they want to. But with the MCU, we're at the point where fans are loath to miss a single entry for fear of missing an important story development or even clue. I think that buys the MCU a lot of goodwill and time. I think people are more forgiving as long as they get that world building. And I think that would also help. DCEU won't do, and it had an end credit scene, but it was not what, an end credit scene isn't a cute little bonus. It's throwing an anchor into the next movie. That's what it does. And, other studios continue to not understand that and utilize that important tool. They're doing it at Star Wars now because Jon Favreau comes from the School of Marvel. I told you they're copying the MCU formula going forward. And he did an end credit scene for The Mandalorian season 2. And it worked out just the way it was supposed to. So that's what to get everyone excited about the next thing, the next big thing. So that's the way it's supposed to work. We'll see what happens when Feige floods the marketplace with MCU chapters this year. You don't want to miss a single chapter, but get ready to do nothing else. But so far, it's been a brilliant and successful plan. And if Feige can up the game and take up that much more viewing hours from his audience, it's just going to squeeze everybody else that much harder. Oh, it's going to be interesting to watch. As for the movie theaters, when will they reopen? It's not looking good. With COVID raging in the United States and globally worse than ever, with new strains emerging that are more contagious than before, and a vaccine rollout that's slow and confusing, they're also going around telling you now that just because you have the vaccine doesn't mean you can't catch coronavirus. So what? But also, many people are not even getting properly vaccinated, with many governments holding back the second shot to try and give more people the first shot, but it's not as effective as if you get 2 shots. These companies tested it for 2. The vaccine isn't being distributed as it was designed. So who knows when movie theaters are going to reopen? It's looking real bad. That's why I still feel that Universal has the best plan. And I also think Disney had a real win with Soul premiering with no extra cost on Disney+, which in its 3rd weekend is still at the top of Disney Plus's trending section. And that's just a single movie instead of a series. That's very impressive. Disney's next earning call is February 11th, so we should find out how much Disney Plus subscribership has grown as a result. Very exciting. And also, if it didn't ding Soul as an awards contender, if Soul can still get that Best Animated Picture Oscar and maybe even get nominated for Best Picture, I think it has a shot, then, that'll be also very important to see. And NBC Universal, though, hasn't released any numbers at all since their original Trolls World Tour headline, which got everybody else excited about doing stuff like this. But we haven't had a headline since, so we have no idea how much revenue their model is generating. Hollywood isn't even going to try to launch another big movie until February, and we'll see how that goes. On iTunes, Tenet finally became available to rent for just $6, and it rocketed to the #1 spot. Finally, everyone said, that's the right price. Once again, proving how important price point is during this pandemic, which has wreaked economic havoc on many. Likewise, Mulan, now on sale for just $10, that found an audience popping back up into the top 10. If it's cheap enough, people will give it a whirl. The Croods 2 also continues to do very well for Universal, and Fatale from Lionsgate is also doing well, getting a very big push on the front of iTunes this weekend. Big ad push. Then on Netflix, while Bridgerton and Cobra Kai continued to dominate, there was also more new content. Talk about a never-ending stream of a resource, right? But yeah, this week, Netflix debuted Lupin, The History of Swear Words, Pieces of a Woman, and Surviving Death. They all debuted, and they all debuted in the top 10. That's amazing. As for what's debuting this week, a surprising amount of content dares go up against WandaVision on Friday. What the heck? Everyone usually runs from Marvel. So WandaVision on Friday will of course be dropping 2 half-hour episodes. They're short, and they're just, they're basically sitcoms, which I think is why Disney Plus decided to debut 2, so that people felt they got enough. I hear the first episode is like 21 minutes, and then about 5 minutes of credits, but no end credit sequence. So, That's short. So WandaVision will be on Friday. And then also on Friday, Apple debuts season 2 of The Servant. And Netflix drops new seasons of Disenchantment and Carmen Sandiego, plus original movie Outside the Wire. Fight Marvel with a Marvel actor, Anthony Mackie. Also, 17 days are up for Universal's News of the World and Promising Young Woman. So both will head to PVOD. You'll be able to rent them for about $20, probably for $20 on Friday, but they'll become available. So what are you planning to watch on Friday, as well as WandaVision, right? So share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.